Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate 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 Vasudevaya.
So read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 14, text number 4. This chapter is entitled The System of Universal Management. Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Gastan Shruti Gananyata.
Gastan Shruti Gananyata.
Gastan Shruti Gananyata.
Gastan Shruti Gananyata.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Tapasa Rishaya Pasyan.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata Yataha.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Tapasat Rishayo Pasyan.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Yato Dhamma Sanatanaha.
Yato Dharma Sanatanaha.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Tapasa Rishayo Tapasyan.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Yato Dhamma Sanatana.
Yato Dharma Sanatana.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Chaturyugante kalena.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Rastan Shruti Gananyata.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Tapasa Rishayo Pasyan.
Yato Dharma Sanatana.
Yato Dharma Sanatana. Chaturyugante kalena. Kristan Shruti Gananyata Tapasa Rishayo Pashyan Yato Dharma Sanatana
Chatu Yuga Ante.
Chatuhu Yugante.
At the end of every 4 years.
At the end of every 4 yugas.
Satya, Dwapara, Treta and Kali.
Satya, Dwapara, Treta and Kali.
Kalena. In due course of time.
In due course of time.
Grastan. Lost. Shruti Ganan. The Vedic instruction. Yata. As. Tapasa. By austerity. Rishaya. Great saintly person. Apashyan. By seeing. By seeing misuse. Yataha. Where from? Dharmaha. Occupational duties. Sanatanaha. Eternal. Translation. At the end of every 4 yugas, the great saintly persons, upon seeing that the eternal occupational duties of mankind have been misused, re-establish the principles of religion. In response, please. At the end of every 4 yugas, the great saintly persons, upon seeing that the eternal occupational duties of mankind have been misused, re-establish the principles of religion. Report by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the words Dharma and Sanatana are very important. Sanatana means eternal and Dharma means occupational duties. From Satya Yuga to Kali Yuga, the principles of religion and occupational duty gradually deteriorate. In Satya Yuga, the religious principles are observed in full without deviation. In Treta Yuga, however, these principles are somewhat neglected and only 3/4 of the religious duties continue. In Dwapara Yuga, only half of the religious principles continue, and in Kali Yuga, only 1/4 of the religious principles, which gradually disappear. At the end of Kali Yuga, the principles of religion or the occupational duties of humanity are almost lost. Indeed, in this Kali Yuga, we have passed through only 5,000 years, yet the decline of Sanatana Dharma is very prominent. The duty of saintly persons, therefore, is to take up seriously the cause of Sanatana Dharma and try to re-establish it for the benefit of the entire human society. The Krishna conscious movement has been started according to this principle, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 12.3.51. Kalaya doshinide rajan asti heko mahan gunan kirtanateva krishnasya mukta sangha param rajet. The entire Kali Yuga is full of faults. It is like an unlimited ocean of faults, but the Krishna conscious movement is very authorized. Therefore, following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who 500 years ago inaugurated the movement of Sankirtan, Krishna Kirtan, we are trying to introduce this movement according to superior orders all over the world. Now, if the inauguration of this movement strictly follow the inaugurators of this movement strictly follow the regulative principles and spread this movement for the benefit of all human society, they will certainly usher in a new way of life by re-establishing Sanatana Dharma. The eternal occupational duties of humanity, the eternal occupational duties of a human being is to serve Krishna. Jiva Swarubhaya Krishna Nityadas. This is the purport of Sanatan Dham. Sanatan means Nitya or eternal, and Krishna Das means servant of Krishna. The eternal occupational duty of the human being is to serve Krishna. This is the sum and substance of the Krishna consciousness movement. Om Gyan Timirandasya Gyanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Charine Nirvishesha Srimati Paschatare Shritavine. Ata Gumbir Vijan Srestas Varnashrama Vibhagasaha Svanasi Sashya Dharma Shya Samsidir Haritoshnam. So, Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, he says, O learned one, the highest activity one can perform according to one's caste divisions and orders of life, according to one's occupational duty, is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, this is the platform for human life. Prabhupada says that human life is meant for regulation, and the other species below the human form are automatically regulated by their, by the guna and karma. By their previous work, they obtain a particular body which is already programmed. We're all programmed. We don't know it, but we're programmed. We're programmed to think a certain way, programmed to act a certain way, and our intelligence is also programmed to be limited to a certain point. So the animals are like that. The body is minimum intelligence used for eating, sleeping, and mating, and the mind is controlled or reduced so that it only thinks about these things and how to get them, and therefore it's peaceful. And the body is designed to, have sex at a certain time of year. It doesn't get agitated beyond what the modes of nature allocate it. So that, animal society in that respect is regulated and relatively peaceful. Of course, there's the fear factor in animal life. Every animal has its predator. But in human life, it's not like that. The facility given is free choice. The original free choice of the soul is actually uncovered, and therefore we're given a body which will fulfill the desires of the soul. It's after so much, what can you say? What do they call it when someone's in prison and they don't act properly? They put them in solitary confinement. So, the animal species are different levels of solitary confinement. But now we've come into the prison, and now we're in there's some prisons, they have like open prison. They trust that the prisoners won't run away, and they're allowed a bit more freedom for less severe crimes. So we're in the open prison now. But we can run for it. And everybody's running for it. But then they're going to get a bigger reaction in due course, aren't they? So we have to, we've given freedom, but we have to really control it and know how to control it, why to control it. So this Varnashram system And these 4 orders are actually specifically made so that we're not confused, that we've got a particular nature and we're given a particular type of activity. And if we do that, we're actually satisfied. No extra education about what if you had that, and what if you had this, and what if this, then it just agitates. So Prabhupada, he didn't actually introduce the Varnashram system so much because, he just saw that nobody's really ready for it. He spoke about it, but he understood that if we can just chant the Maha Mantra and start to regulate our life around the Vaishnava principles, then we can automatically fit into the Varnashram system. Even though, some of us are in one ashram and part of us are in another ashram. We spoke about this earlier. Still, if we can function to the best of our ability. Prabhupada said somehow or other. So that means that you may not be a pure this or a pure Brahmin or a pure Kshatriya, but somehow or other you have to actually work with what you've got. So there's a lot of, we're very liberal in this movement in that respect. Because it's difficult for people who are so conditioned, like women. They're conditioned now, they should have what the men have, and we're equal. And this has been, we're brought up into an educational system which pushes that. And what happens is that, we become so indoctrinated that when we actually introduce what the Vedic position of a woman is and what a duty is, they feel, due to false ego, affronted. And so Prabhupada had to accommodate that. He couldn't actually expect everybody to just swallow everything straight away. So the women had to be engaged in a certain way, Brahman thread, and credit due, he says they're as good as the men because they're actually going out in Sankirtan in that respect. But there's a lot of things that the women can't do that the men do. And, this should be taken into consideration. And then in due course of time we can really have a peaceful situation where devotees actually, when they get married, they stay together. It's not an easy thing. I think the divorce rate in ISKCON is bigger than the divorce rate outside, because we have to actually follow a spiritual way of life. And if both are not serious, then it won't work. So, really, as human beings, we have to do our duty. As devotees, we have to do our duty. It's not a matter of picking and choosing everything we do. But sometimes we have to do, so we have to have a particular duty, and we should follow that duty. And that's revealed in due course of time. In the beginning, what is it? It's do the needful, and then we gradually start to understand what our propensity is. So that's also maybe a problem in ISKCON. That, one leader once told me that the biggest problem is that devotees are floating about from this situation to that situation to that situation. And it's difficult to contain them in a situation where they can actually give a concerted effort to a project and help that project to flourish. This was actually when I was in Russia. I said, Maharaj, all the devotees are so enthusiastic about festivals. He said, yeah, that's the problem. The festival minded, everywhere I want to experience a festival. It's what I want to do. I want to experience what it's like in this country. I want to experience what it's like in that service. And then, it means that the whole movement is actually stunted. So this is a mode of passion, mode of goodness. Stunted means it's like, somebody who can't grow to full height is stunted. like a tree, it's stunted, it won't grow to full height. In other words, the movement can't grow to full potential. And so, we have to come to that mode that has to be overcome at some point. And we have to start delving into, the area of dutiful service. Not in the material world, it's a mindful service, don't they? Be mindful. But we shouldn't be too mindful. Otherwise the mind... Chariot of the mind, Manoratena. Anyway, this is just a general thing. The movement accommodates every situation, but it's something to be recognised, and if that's actually dealt with, then we can really go forward. That's the most difficult thing, to find somebody who's committed to something and will follow it through. Where were we now? We were talking about Varnashram Dham and being committed to our particular ashram or to our particular service. In previous ages, it says, Kritaya yat jaito vishnum tretaya yajasamakai dvapare paricharyayam kaludat narikirtinat. There are different types of... the world's in flux. Why is it in flux? Because the modes of nature are in flux. Does anybody know anything about electrical engineering? We've got any electrical engineers here? I used to be trained as an electrical engineer, and when there's electricity, there's actually three modes of electricity. Do you know that? 3 phases. And when you draw the path, they're like they're all sort of what can you say? They're all synchronized. That's the word, synchronized. That when the red, there's 3 phases, and the color. What color are they? Red.
Green.
No.
Blue.
Blue. And yellow.
Yellow.
What's the modes of matter? Red, blue, and yellow. So sometimes the red phase is actually optimum voltage, and the other 2 phases, they actually reduce the voltage. Then when the red phase starts to come down, the other 2 phases start to come up, and one of them becomes prominent, then those 2 phases go down. And then the 3rd phase comes up, and the other 2. So that's how the modes of nature work. At different times of the day, the different phases actually prominent. So, according to the modes of nature and how they're prominent, then we have different, different ages also. The mode of goodness is prominent in the Satya Yuga, and therefore there's a different way of dealing with self-realization. In the Treta Yuga, the modes are different, so different way of dealing. Then Dwapara Yuga, another way. And so in this age, it's Kala Dosha Niderajan Asti Eka Mahanganam Kirtanat Eva Krishna Shah Mukta Sangam Parambrajet. That, we've so many disqualifications. But it says that if we can just chant the Hare Krishna Maha mantra, all those disqualifications are actually nullified. In fact, more than that, if we chant it properly, we capture Krishna. What's that? Namno hi yavati shakti, papam niharane hare, tabat kautam nishaknoti, patakam pataki naraha. If we chant the holy name of the Lord once correctly, he says we can nullify more sins than we're able to commit. That's how powerful the holy name is. Go for that one holy name that you chant properly, yeah? And then you can do what you want. Actually, Prabhupada, did I tell you? I said the other day about Srutikirti was losing his footing in, did I? He was his servant, and his rounds were going down, for some reason. And Prabhupada noticed, but Srutikirti didn't know he'd noticed. And one day Prabhupada was chanting his rounds, Srutikirti was sat there, and he really emphasised the Maha mantra. And for the last few mantras he went, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Then when he finished, he picked his bead bag up and put it down. He says, now I can do any damn thing I want. But the point is, if we've chanted properly, we won't do any damn thing we want. We'll do what what the Super Soul tells us and what the devotees tell us. So yeah, we can take, there's no disqualification, everybody. The only disqualification is the is it the, where are you from?
Russia.
What's the I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Okay, mind.
The mind.
Okay.
The mind's the only problem.
From
Yeah, that's the only. Sometimes you can see people's minds working, can't you? What's the index of the mind?
Face.
The face. If you watch a person's face, you can understand his consciousness. Okay, so we'll move on to the next point. So the whole process is described in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We needn't go past the second chapter of the first canto if we, because it's all there. The rest of it is actually to get us to that point. So Prabhupada, just like the Bhagavad Gita, is given the conclusion of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the second chapter. And what's that conclusion? Associate and hear from great souls. Jnane priya samudapasyanamantiyeva. Stay in your own position and hear. Serve, and then gradually a taste for hearing starts to come. We're still, we're still working for that taste for hearing. We keep serving, we keep performing service in Prabhupada's movement, then by Prabhupada's grace we get a taste for hearing. Shushrushosh Rajadanasya Vasudeva Katavachi Shanmahat Sevaya Vipa Punyatirtha Nishevana. Shushrusho means hearing. And then Shrinvatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Vidyantaksto Hebadrane Vidonati Saritsatam. And then it talks about the serious hearer. Then it destroys all the abhadrani, all the dirty things in the heart, and one becomes enthusiastic. Srimvatam Svakata Krishna, the serious student. Punya Shravana Kirtana, this Ravana, this chanting is the highest pious activity. So what is it? When in doubt, get the bead bag out. Sometimes we get the mind out, don't we? We've got some spare time. We pull them. Don't do it. Have you ever thought about a thing long enough and it gets better? Does it get better?
after chanting.
Eh?
After chanting. It gets better after chanting.
After chanting, but if you just listen to the mind, does it get better? Maybe if you're focused on in Krishna consciousness, then you're doing something, but if it's idle mind, then it's a devil's workshop. So, it says that all that is troublesome to the mind. Next verse is well, before we get to the next verse, he says, what does the mind, if we don't control it, it resorts to lust. It automatically starts thinking about how to enjoy the world. And eventually it'll regress to thinking about sex life at some point, because that's the biggest, consider the biggest enjoyment in the material world. And so this says that if we hear properly and we carry on hearing, it says that actually we'll become peaceful. One devotee once asked me when I was a brahmachari, he said, "Are you peaceful?" I thought, what's he talking about? Am I peaceful? What do you think? What do you mean? He says, are you actually not agitated by sex life, sex thought? That's real peace, when that's actually disappears. And it says, one who carries on chanting in the purport, it says, many great stalwarts on the path of transcendental advancement have fallen to this sex attraction. He says, but one who's hearing regularly Srimad Bhagavatam with proper sincerity and attention, he said it'll overcome those thoughts for good. It's so powerful. And then, but the process is nasta prayeshu abhadreshu. Nityam, we have to constantly be hearing. Bhagavata sevaya and serving. Serving Bhagavat person and serving both. Nityam Bhagavati Uttama Shlokera. The slokas from Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. Naisti means nishta, fixed. One becomes fixed. And then all the abhadrani, all the dirt in the heart is almost completely destroyed. It's still a little bit left. And that's because we have this material body and we're in the material world. So that's something we have to tolerate. And it says we become established in the mode of goodness then. Goodness means that we know what to do and what not to do. We see things in proper perspective. And that's coming from super soul and devotees who are in goodness. He says when we're at that time, tadara jastama bhava kama loba deyaschaya chete ete anavidim stita sattve prasidati. Then we become peaceful. Tada, at that time, tada raja kama bhava. That kama means ignorance. Tama means passion. Tada raja. Raja means passion. Tama means ignorance. Kama, the lust in the heart disappeared. Cheta ete anavidim. The heart becomes completely purified. And then, stita sattve prasidati. We become fixed in goodness. But it's still, other one is a purification to goodness. We become fixed in goodness. The modes are actually overcome. Remember we were talking about the modes. They're causing the problem. And then, what is it? Prashanta Manasam Manasoyena, is it?
Evam Prasanna.
Evam Prasanna Manaso, Bhagavat Bhakti, Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam, Mukta Sangasya Jayate. Then we come from the Brahmanical platform of goodness and we come to the Vaishnava platform. The difference is one's in goodness and one's in pure goodness. The actual service we perform, it enlivens the heart. When the heart becomes enlivened, then there's no actual, we don't need regulated devotional service. We just call Vaidhi Bhakti. So, the whole point is to get a taste. Because once we get a taste, a real taste, and constant taste, then we're so much on the safe side. And that's gradually coming. But we have to be really, really patient and diligent. And then when we get that taste, we have to maintain it. That's a mode of goodness, maintaining the taste also. And then at that point, the attachment to this world is actually cut. When we get that taste, then it's cut. And we don't perform any more fruitive activities. And we see the self as master, it says. We see oneself as master. Yes! Mm-hmm. But actually they altered that translation to one sees oneself and his master. So I don't know what does it say? We got a first canto, let's have a look. See what Kindle says. See. Yeah, Vidyata Hridayagvantis Chidjante Sarvasamshayad Shyamte Chashikamani Drishta Eva Manisvare. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated and one sees the self as master. So we have to read that properly. We're not actually masters. But we see that we're actually above the modes of nature. We're above the aparaprakriti. We're actually paraprakriti. We don't have to be controlled by the modes of nature. And we also, at that point, we appreciate Krishna's position also, that we're eternal servants of Krishna. So this is the philosophy behind that. In that is everything encapsulated, the whole Bhagavatam. And so, in the age of Kali, we have to really elaborate on the philosophy so that people can understand it. And it's become more and more prominent as time goes on. Prabhupada is really elaborating the Srimad Bhagavatam for time, place and circumstance. And then it says that, right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, that this Bhagavatam is actually very sweet to hear. He says, but when it's passed on from one person to another, it talks about the parrot, doesn't it? The parrot who nibbles on a bit of fruit, it says that fruit is actually becomes sweeter. So when the philosophy is spoken according to time, place, and circumstance for the benefit of the people of that time, it becomes sweeter because the message is actually spread to more people and they can taste it. And so this is our work. Prabhupada was criticised heavily because he didn't follow the modus operandum of the way they preached in India, where he changed a lot of things. And his godbrothers were upset about it. And Prabhupada writes in the Nectar of Devotion, or the Nectar of Instruction, that they're less intelligent. They can't understand that if you present it as they understood it from their spiritual master, then it wouldn't have an effect on the people of the West. So Prabhupada was very, very careful to do that, but he didn't dilute anything. He didn't present everything, but what he presented was the real McCoy, but he presented it at a time when they were ready. And so that's our work now. We have to analyse. It takes a lot of intelligence and patience. We have to analyse the clientele who come to the temple, and how do we actually train them to become Krishna conscious, and what clientele do we want to come to the temple, and how do we attract them, and how do we make it suitable so they can be trained. So in the beginning of devotional service, Prabhupada says it takes expert guidance. In Bhagavad Gita it says that it takes expert guidance to bring one from material life to relative steadiness in devotional life. So this is our challenge. Prabhupada was constantly, changing. When he first came, actually, maybe we feel like that sometimes. He landed at Boston Pier Harbour, and he went into town with Captain Pandya, and when he came back, he wrote a poem, Bhagavat Marking Dham, and he says, "My dear Lord Krishna," first thing he said, "I don't know why you've brought me to this horrible place." Everybody's steeped in the modes of passion and ignorance. They have no inclination towards spiritual life. How will they understand this message? He said, you've given me the name I've been given the name Bhaktivedanta. How, you can fulfill the purport of that name, that Bhakti is the end of all knowledge. He says, but it's beyond my ability to actually preach. Therefore, you can actually fulfill the purport of that name by giving me that ability. He says, and then he said, make me dance, make me dance, make me dance. So that's our process, is that we're never actually frustrated in devotional service. If we're frustrated and we remain frustrated, a frustration will come, when we're in a certain situation, but immediately we should start thinking, oh, wait a minute, and then adjust ourselves to actually accommodate that. Because there's something to learn from everything, and we're gradually becoming refined. And we're gradually learning to see that, and I need to take shelter of Krishna. I have to be remembering that, Krishna's the doer, and that he's actually personally in that situation, and how can I actually make it work? And in this way, we develop Krishna consciousness, that we're functioning in parallel. Is it series or parallel? We're functioning in both. The devotee is functioning in both. Series means one after another. Like, there's Krishna, the spiritual master, the devotee. So we're in that. But we're also, Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita, when Sanjaya, he saw what was happening on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he says this was by both the help of his spiritual master, and he could see directly by the super soul also. He says both things are there. The spiritual master's instructions, and we also have connection with Krishna as well. And so we're able to see the way things are going, how the super soul is guiding us. And that's what Prabhupada did. Many times he would ask his disciples, what do we do? He couldn't actually, at that moment in time, he was relying on their expertise as Westerners to tell him what we needed to do in that situation. And when he was doing things, he always said we, didn't he? The royal we. He meant his spiritual master. He was always thinking that Bhaktivedanta Saraswati is actually present. Okay, it's at nearly 9 o'clock, so we can stop there. So, anybody got any comments or questions?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the class. So, can you tell us your own experience, how to develop a test to read and to hear and read Srimad Bhagavatam?
I'm still trying, but it's like we have to be. The more we read it, the more we get a taste. The more we do a thing, the more we become, first of all, conditioned to doing it. So the body and mind start to think about doing it at that particular time if it's regulated. And then when we do it, we're not at that point. I say, but otherwise we don't. Should I do some reading? And then something distracts you. And because you tend to go for the easiest thing. It's not always the easy thing to pick up the Bhagavatam. So if you read at a certain time of day, that's why we have the morning program at a certain time of day. It's more the goodness. where it's regulated. We don't have to think about it. And we study it, not just read it, but study it. And not just study it, but we assimilate it. That means we're actually trying to see how it applies to me, and or how to apply it in our lives. And then it becomes very relevant to our activities. Many times we read Bhagavad Gita, we do service, and then we read Bhagavad Gita, and the Gita's telling us what we needed to know. We choose where we open it, it tells us what we need to know about how we should be acting in that situation. So we need to be actually reading Shastra regularly, and then we develop the faith. Otherwise, we go doing things without proper consciousness, and then if we end up proper consciousness, we lose the taste. And then, we start, then material energy starts pulling at our weaknesses until it pulls us out of Krishna consciousness if we're not careful. And it happens to the most powerful devotees if they don't actually focus.
Because Maharaj, it seems that in ISKCON, almost all devotees chanting Hare Krishna, sitting around there like that. But sometimes the devotees don't really read. Don't
Sometimes
read.
the devotees will.
Most of the devotees put emphasis on chanting Hare Krishna first.
What? Chanting?
Chanting the 16 rounds a day.
Yeah.
But many devotees are not really regularly reading.
They're not?
Regularly reading.
Oh, right.
Gita or Bhagavatam.
Yeah, so we need both. If you can chant all day with a taste, then that's the goal. But we're not on that platform. We're not a long way from that platform. Just sit and chant all day, and just be in ecstasy, contacting Krishna through the Maha Mantra. He is the Maha Mantra actually. That's okay. That's what we're aiming for. But we need the roadmap. You know what I mean? Where are we? Oh, there we are. Look. Sat nav. We need to be. Otherwise, if we don't know where we're going, did I talk about that in the other class? George Harrison, who wrote a record, says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you've no confidence. You won't move on. Have you noticed when you get lost, you don't speed up, do you? You come to a halt, don't you? Because you don't know which way to go, and that's what happens to devotional service. You come to your impetus starts to decline, and then the material energy starts to. We're fighting against the material energy. So we have to know, how the material energy works. That's the most important thing. If you're in a war, what's the best weapon? It's a spy. Because he can actually tell you where the weaknesses are, and then you don't waste effort in the wrong places. So these are spies against Maya. That's why these demonic authorities don't want to burn them. If they get rid of the knowledge, then we're lost.
Thank you for the class. Today's appearance of Srivas Pandit. How can we understand a bit better his personality, how important he is in our devotional life?
Srivas Pandit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Srivas Pandit is an example for us of detachment. Lord Chaitanya and all the devotees were dancing in his house, ecstatic kirtan. And then, Srivas noticed his wife and some relatives, they were actually sobbing in the next room. So went into the next room and they found out that his son had died. And immediately said, stop sobbing. He must have felt some pain as well, it's not like he were like, we get attached to things in this world, just even a devotee. He must have been heartbroken. And he said, if Lord Chaitanya finds out, he says he'll spoil his ecstasy in the kirtan. He says, besides that, he's left his body. There's a full roaring kirtan by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no doubt where he's gone. So we should think like that. So I don't want to, if anybody starts crying and Lord Chaitanya finds out, he says, I'll get a rope, I'll tie it round my neck, and I'll put a big stone on it, I'll jump in the Ganges. Srivastaka ki jai. So that's detachment, isn't it? That's Krishna consciousness. So yeah, that's Srivastaka. He's the, what is it? He's the devotee. We have different energies in the Panchatattva. We have the Swarup, which is Lord Chaitanya, or Rupa, that's Lord Chaitanya, Bhakti Rupa, Bhakti Swarupa, that's a form of the Lord Nityananda, Bhakti Avatara, that's Advaita Acharya, he's all Vishnu Tattva. And then we have Bhakti Shakti, that's Radha, the Shakti of the Lord Radharani, and Bhakti, Srivastaka or Narada Muni. It's not it's not long ago since they appeared. It's only 500 years, just over 500 years ago. And they only appear once in this Manvantara, is it? Or in this cycle. There's 70 cycles and they appear once in those 70 cycles. That's one manu, isn't it? So this is a very auspicious time to practice. We're actually in the best situation we could ever be. Prabhupada's just come and, we've got a foundation and now, we can go out and chant the Maha Mantra in the street. We can distribute books, distribute prashadam and give, be the first ones to give Krishna consciousness to somebody who's been asleep for millions of births. That's what it means, actually. When we approach somebody, with their first contact, or most likely their first contact with Krishna consciousness, since they actually came into the material world, or since they lost the human form of life. And so we've everything to be enthusiastic about, and because we're prepared to do that, not everybody can be out there, but the whole movement's geared to doing that. So if we're conscious of that, then when we work together, things will go very nicely. And we'll always feel enthusiastic. We tend to actually become lazy with our consciousness, don't we? We have to keep, more the goodness, we have to keep pushing. We have to keep pushing. Rounds sometimes, they start to go down, have you noticed? Push back up. Push it back up, You've got to keep fighting. It's not that, we get to a platform where, we're on automatic pilot, press the prema button and we're there, chanting with prayer. It's like we probably once when we get to the prema platform, we won't need to push any buttons. The tunnel will be going all the time. But until we get to that point, we have to keep fighting the material energy. That's why, what do they call him? The Black Lotus. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he wrote those books called Spiritual Warrior. It's actually, we have to be a warrior in devotional service. Okay. For shortened time. Everybody's reward for sitting through Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ratharao Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Dayananda Maharaj ki jai.